Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7 by 7. We're at episode number 1650 today, and today we're going to be talking about the Disney Plus streaming service. So Disney CEO Bob Iger gave a very far-reaching interview to Barron's, which is a business trade publication, and one of the things that got talked about in very great detail was the Disney Plus streaming service. Not the actual service itself, but the rationale behind a lot of the decisions that went into the creation of the service and about the content that's going into the service, how they're developing content, how they're thinking about content, how they're thinking about licensing revenue, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So part of this is fascinating just for the experience of, what it's going to be like to enjoy Star Wars content on the Disney Plus streaming service. And another part of this is fascinating just because of the inside baseball of things. From time to time, we do like to talk about the business of Star Wars, and this one is really kind of a master class in that situation. When Bob Iger talks about the streaming service here, we're going to take a few quotes from the article and from the interview to really get into what is going on behind the scenes with the development of the streaming service and how it's going to affect us as Star Wars fans and Star Wars content consumers. Early on in the article, Bob Iger says, if you're investing for the future and you're spending to create a new business model whose revenue is going to lag the launch and the expense of the initiative, then your profits are going to go down. And then he talks about compensation and stuff. But the point that he's saying here is that, hey, this is going to be a money-losing initiative at first, at the very least. And one of the things he points out subsequently is he says, in addition, we're no longer licensing our movies to Netflix, so we're losing that licensing revenue that went directly to the studio, that went to enabling them to grow, that went directly to their pockets, really their compensation. Now, this is something that we kind of already knew. There have been various announcements saying, oh, everything's leaving Netflix, and yeah, that's certainly true, but the dates of when things have been supposed to leave Netflix have been greatly exaggerated. I'm not saying that they're not going to be gone by the end of 2019, because I think that's probably the likely time period when the Disney Plus streaming service launches, but, they've been talking about the Clone Wars leaving of Netflix for years and years and years, and for a good while it was something like March of every single year the availability was supposed to be that's it, Clone Wars is leaving in March of 2015, it's leaving in 2016, it's leaving in 2017. Hasn't happened yet, but you can bet your bottom dollar that when the Disney Plus streaming service gets up and running, then yeah, that's when you're going to see the content finally leaving Netflix once and for all. And in talking about the technology that they needed to pull off the Disney Plus streaming service, well, they didn't build it from scratch. It turns out that they pitched to the board of Disney that they buy a platform that had been created by Major League Baseball called BAMTech. And they had apparently invested in it as a minority partner, according to Iger, and that gave them the opportunity to look under the hood, to test it, determine whether it was robust enough and could do the kinds of things we needed to do to take our business in that direction into the direct-to-consumer market. And it was during 2016, very quickly, that they ended up saying, yes, this is it, this is what we need, and we're going to launch this platform with this BAMTech technology. And so we know that the platform is going to launch with the Clone Wars saved, that being Season 7 of the Clone Wars series. We know it's going to launch with The Mandalorian. We know the Cassian Andor series is in development. And we also know that Star Wars movies and possibly full TV shows, so the entire Clone Wars, the entire Rebels, will be heading over to this new streaming service as well. But, as far as stuff like The Mandalorian goes, well, they have to figure out how they're going to do this, what is actually going to be on this platform. And Iger addressed this idea as well. He said, I guess we could have made the Star Wars series, that would be The Mandalorian, for ABC if we wanted, but the budget and what we're spending on it and the nature of the material suggested it would be a perfect anchor for the new service. Because it's a priority for the company, that needs to be reflected in the trafficking or the direction of where a lot of content goes. There have to be some subjective decisions made on where stuff goes because we have to feed this new beast, which incidentally later on in the article, or actually maybe it was earlier on in the article, they said that they haven't even decided yet, according to Iger, what they're going to charge for this streaming service. But when Iger talks about, quote unquote, feeding the beast, that has to do with, well, what are they going to put on this platform? And naturally, one of the things that you might wonder about are Star Wars movies, like actual first run movies. Certainly Disney has done this with their own. I mean, back in the day when it was VHS, they would do, straight to VHS sequels of their animated films and whatnot. So, you could be certainly forgiven for wondering, well, does that mean that Star Wars movies are just going to be heading to the platform, or will they actually have theatrical level releases? And at least as a first run situation, the answer seems to be no, absolutely not. Actually, pretty well definitively not. Here again, according to Iger, almost every movie the studio makes is a $100 million plus movie. That's in terms of its budget. And we're not looking to make movies at that level for the service. We're looking to invest significantly in television series on a per episode basis, which certainly The Mandalorian is because it's supposed to be $100 million for 10 episodes. And we're looking to make movies that are higher budget, but nothing like the $100 million plus. We wouldn't make a Star Wars movie for this platform. He says that explicitly. When everybody goes out on the weekend and you have a movie that opens up to 200 million, there's a buzz that creates, that enhances value. We like that. And eventually the movies we're making are going to end up on the service. So that in a nutshell is the strategy behind the content that's going on to the Disney Plus streaming service, with one exception, or maybe two actually, that I can think of at the top of my head. And I'll get to those in just a second. I just do want to say before I forget, I hope you're subscribing to the show. If you're not already, please do. And if you are already, then thank you so much. And I hope you'll also consider supporting this daily dose of Star Wars joy by joining the community with me at patreon.com/SW7x7. So the as yet unresolved things have to do with other streaming services. So we know that content is going to be leaving Netflix eventually, right? And that licensing revenue won't be generated. But there's been no mention of Amazon or Vudu, for example, two other movie streaming platforms that do have Lucasfilm content on there. And, will they continue to have that Lucasfilm content as well? Or will that also move exclusively to the Disney Plus streaming service? That question hasn't been answered just yet. So I'll be very curious to see what they decide to do with that. I think that's the final piece of the puzzle in how Star Wars content is going to be handled from late 2019 going forward. But otherwise, we pretty much now know everything in a nutshell based on the conversation that Bob Iger had with Barron's, the business trade publication that we just talked about here on today's episode. And thank you so much for joining me for it. That is going to do it for today. And lest I forget to tell you, may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.